What have you done to your countries that your people want to come here?
March and March began as a movement focused on illegal immigration, border control, and community frustrations.
We don't have South Africans clamoring to get to Ghana. We don't have South Africans clamoring to get to Nigeria.
It's about what is the government doing about these situations. And again, it's not the only thing that they've brought up.
Before any other African governments come and have anything to say about South Africa, what's happening in your country that your people want to go through a border, go over a river to get into South Africa? If you're given a position of national leadership, you have a God-given mandate to be a good steward and to rule wisely the people.
This is the Political Show.
Hey, and welcome to the Political Show right here on Active FM, where radio has never been better. I'm your girl Cynthia, but you can call me Gix, and with me in studio we have
Gavin Ensland.
Pastor Gavin Ensland, right here on the Political Show, where Christ politics is
Hot politics.
hard politics. And obviously it's one of the biggest things happening in South Africa right now, and that is the 30 June or June 30 shutdown, and that we're going to continue discussing it, and we're going to be asking or raising bigger questions in terms of who is behind the movement, who's funding it, what is Jacinta Zuma saying about this, and what does this mean for South Africa? We're going to just have a bit of a discussion around that. Pascal, do you want to give a more brief explanation?
Obviously, in South Africa, the whole thing around June 30 and the deadline set by March and March with regards the government, having to step up and do something with regards, everything that's going on with illegal immigration and all of those sorts of things. There's a lot of panic in the country, and a lot of messages that June 30 everything's going to fall apart, and all of those sorts of things. So we're gonna discuss that more. And is the March and March organization something that we can trust, or do we need to be wary of them? And also, if you look at the views that South Africans have of what March and March are talking about, and then you look at the views that people of foreign descent, what the views they have about March and March, we're going to talk about that as well, because at the end of the day, as Christians, we need to get back to the Bible when we start talking about all of these things. So, yep, March and March. It's a March and March special here in June 2026.
Yes. I mean, this week we just celebrated June 16, and another important date, another date that is on everybody's mind is the 30th of June. It's going to be a hot show, as always, right here on the Political Show, where Christ politics is
Hot politics.
hot politics.
Waiting.
So now, if you don't know who March and March is, March and March began as a movement focused on illegal immigration, border control, and community frustrations. And the supporters basically argue that South Africa's immigration system is failing, and that illegal immigration is placing pressure on things like housing, schools, hospitals, employment opportunities, and local services, and that the government has a responsibility to control who enters the country and enforce immigration laws. And then when we look on the other side of this immigration debate, critics argue that the situation is more complicated, that not every foreign national is undocumented, which we've covered in the show, or even if you find some who have expired documents, it's not necessarily it's something that was out of their control because of how the Home Affairs system is running. There are many immigrants who work legally, who run businesses, who contribute to economies and have families and long-standing relationships in South Africa. And the concern with these critics are that the failure of the government system should not automatically become blame placed on an entire group of people. So what are your thoughts on that before we go into who's funding March and March?
Yeah, I think blame is happening on an entire group of people on both sides. Obviously, first of all, in terms of foreigners, and they've been put in a certain light, just being illegals, and all of that sort of stuff. And what I would encourage people to do is to start looking at dealing with cases individually. There are challenges, and there are people that are coming in that are literally a threat to South Africa's national security. And we've been speaking about this, and the specter of Islam, the Islamic religion looms large. And if you want South Africa to become an Islamic state, you will be very happy with the status of the current immigration disaster that we've got on our books. But at the same time, we've also you can't just rope everyone in there. Many of the people that are called illegal foreigners were born in South Africa, and this is a reality. The fact of the matter is, when those people's parents came in, the majority of black South Africa was in favor of black Africans from other parts of Africa coming in so that they could really overwhelm the numbers of white people. I mean, I think we must put that on the table. That was a common view amongst many black South Africans, and definitely amongst the political parties. So the problem that we've got comes out of that attitude, and also either through lack of ability or on purpose, the government doing a terrible job in terms of enforcing the country's immigration laws and protecting the border. So, now you've got people that have been born here, and their parents got in the right paperwork 30, I'm talking about 30, 40 years ago with some of these people. They wouldn't have had a problem. In fact, they'd probably be voting today.
Yeah.
That's how easy it was 30, 40 years ago. So, what is it that caused these people to come into South Africa and use the refugee, asylum process? And that process was abused.
Yeah.
Who encouraged the abuse of the asylum process? Surely that's the government. And so people need to start looking at the government. But even then, local South Africans, the term xenophobic is being used. And that's also the same as people would characterize all the foreigners as being criminals and stuff like that. To just say that South Africans are raising an issue because they're xenophobic is also not true.
Yeah.
What many South Africans are frustrated at is the abject failure of the government to do their job. And remember, our tax money is being used to fund all of the stuff that the government's supposed to be doing. And on top of that, we don't live in a monarchy in South Africa. South Africa is a constitutional republic. We have a constitution, we're a republic, and we operate by the principle of the rule of law. Now, the people that are in the presidency, that are in cabinet, that are in parliament, are the representatives of the people. The statement when the ANC took over was the people shall govern.
Yeah.
And the people never governed South Africa into this mess. Their representatives did, and the representatives have let the people down.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean now, because the people are now standing up and saying, no, we require our representatives to fulfill our will, because they're supposed to be representing us. That's not xenophobic. Now, obviously on both sides, both on the foreigner side, you get criminal elements, you get people that are doing wrong stuff. And on the South African side, you get people that are attacking foreigners. Let's not get away from the real issues at hand. And, don't just generalize, because generalizations aren't going to solve the problem.
Then, sorry, this is a question that we didn't plan for actually, but it just came up in my mind as we were speaking now. What are your thoughts on, now obviously I understand we've spoken about how through social media and all of these things, mainstream media and stuff like that, how it's looked like there's an intense, basically we're in a civil war situation happening in South Africa. What are your thoughts on only now governments from different African countries doing something about it. So, for instance, was it Ghana that took back, I think, close to 1,000 people? Was it Ghana, if I'm not mistaken?
Ghana, yeah.
Yes. And then now recently Nigeria is doing the same thing and stuff. I was having a conversation with people recently, and they were speaking about the fact that why all of a sudden now they can take 1,000 people back. They can take over 600 people back, but then throughout these years, they haven't been doing anything about the situation with all of these foreigners coming to South Africa, whether legal or illegal. So what are your thoughts on like a question like that?
I'm extremely unhappy about some of the things some of those governments have said. I'm extremely unhappy about podcasts that I've seen coming out of Ghana and Nigeria, and things that are that have been said even by foreign nationals that the reality is South Africans are lazy and all sorts of stuff like that. And when these governments now are repatriating their citizens, so-called, first of all, if Nigeria takes 1,000 people back from South Africa, what is that? There's millions here. So what is that? I mean, if you're saying like 1,000 have gone, that's nothing. And I bet every week 1,000 people would travel from South Africa to Nigeria anyway, probably more than that. So, first of all, I don't believe what they're saying. And number two, what have you done to your countries that your people want to come here? We don't have South Africans clamoring to get to Ghana. We don't have South Africans clamoring to get to Nigeria. Why not? What is going on in your country? And before any other African governments come and have anything to say about South Africa, what's happening in your country that your people want to go through a border, go over a river to get into South Africa in order to escape where you are in charge? And what are you going to do to fix it? Because if you take countries like Ghana and Nigeria, they've got plenty of natural resources. So the same as what I would say for South Africa. People on this continent shouldn't be poor. So what are the rulers doing that there's such widespread poverty on this continent? No, it's just it's a shameful marketing campaign as far as I'm concerned, and people getting on the bandwagon to say bad thing about the South African people who actually up in arms about their government.
So now let's get to the question of who's funding March and March. And this is a question that people are starting to ask, because when you look at a national movement like that, it requires resources such as transport, and you've seen how they've gathered in mass and stuff like that, sound equipment, branding, advertising, obviously social media marketing and all of these things, as well as legal support and organization. And all of these things cost money. And the question is, where is this money coming from? And when we look at March and March's position, they say that the funding comes through public donations, through supporters, crowdfunding, and merchandise. And they deny claims that there are political parties secretly funding them, foreign organizations that control them, and wealthy individuals that are behind the movement. However, when the critical evaluation of the situation is that it is possible for grassroots movements to survive through small donations, even if enough people contribute. But without transparent financial reporting, outsiders cannot independently verify every funding source. And currently, there's no publicly proven evidence that a political party or foreign organization is secretly funding the movement. But political influence does not always require direct funding. And support, alliances, and shared goals can still shape a movement. So even though there isn't anything out in the open to say that this specific party is funding them, there's still speculations, and people are still saying that there's a possibility that behind the scenes there's some sort of political influence. Behind the scenes there's some sort of maybe possibly foreign organization that is financing this movement. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you obviously put both arguments, so I want to first ask what your opinion is.
My opinion is, one of the evaluations is that because there's nothing publicly proven that there's a financial organization secretly funding this. But when you see the masses, when you see the amount of influence, even screen time that they have, there has to be some sort of maybe wealthy individuals or some sort of movement that is funding this. Personally, for me, I think that behind the scenes, even though openly on their website and stuff you can give donations and things like that, but I personally think that behind the scenes there is some sort of organization or people with the big money that is funding this movement.
This is a problem that's been brewing, and people are looking for a voice. And the government has just ignored things for a while. If I compare March on March to Operation Dudula, Dudula, they would have a lot of flags. There would always be police escort, things like this. Whereas on March on March, I don't really see that. When I look at the situations, a lot of the time, it seems to be ordinary South Africans, that are getting involved here. Some of them, sometimes they come in traditional dress, and things like that. So there might be funding, but there is a chance that there isn't. That is the bottom line. One of the things I do want to say, especially with strategies that are being used by the Muslims, there is a war coming to South Africa. I don't know when it will happen. And it might be that this March and things is the start of it. It could well be. But there is, March and March is probably more popular than any political party in South Africa. So if you look now, they apparently have been endorsed. March and March has been endorsed by Umkhonto Sizwe. Obviously, we've heard Herman Mashaba, and he's saying stuff, about the foreigners. He's been saying it for a while. But for me, these politicians are just jumping on the bandwagon. They're seeing an issue, and they're realizing that this is a big issue for many voters. And so if I take MK, I don't trust him. So why would they jump on this issue? Potentially, we've got elections in November. And, the thing is at the end of the day, this is a big issue in South Africa. And big issues don't need to be funded. Just for example, I've got this one post here in Limpopo, and they're saying there that you've got foreign nationals burning houses because they're fighting with South Africans. And that's what I'm saying. There is a potential here for a civil war. And if I can just say it, for a long time, I believe there were external forces trying to cause a civil war in South Africa, and they would do it between black and white. They lost that one. And now that's potentially stoking the fires between South Africans and foreigners living in South Africa. At this point, I don't know how that's going to turn out, but that is a concern for me. There's definitely the prospect that in the future there could be a massive war here. And how exactly that would turn out, I don't know.
Hearing what you're saying and stuff, I've seen so many situations where South Africans have gone together and raised money through crowdfunding and things. So thinking of it from that perspective, I could say, okay, there's a possibility that it's self-funded. More on there's a possibility of private funding. In terms of June 30, right? March and March has announced a national shutdown, and we're currently sitting on the 20th of June, meaning that we're just under 10, officially 10 days away from the June 30 deadline, and they've announced a national shutdown for June 30. And the idea is that citizens stay away from work, citizens participate in marches, and the government feels the pressure. And what a lot of people are speaking about is that there's this important distinction that a shutdown does not necessarily mean violence, forced closure, or chaos. It just means that people are choosing not to participate in normal economic activity. And that if they have enough support, if they come out in the thousands that people are not, that are participating in the shutdown, then it will create a tension. If there's tens of thousands, then it creates political pressure, and then hundreds of thousands can change national politics. Just a quick thoughts on your side, and then we're just going to speak a bit about Jacinta Zuma as well.
Yeah. So I thought about what?
The whole thing of the announcements of the national shutdown, and should they have enough public support, the type of attention that it's going to bring.
Yeah, look, I don't know what's going to happen with the shutdown. The shutdown may happen, it may not. If March and March has widespread support, then the South African government's going to be very worried on the 30th of June or the 1st of July. And there will be masses of people out on the streets. And then I'm pretty sure what will also happen, there will be some attacks from agitators wanting to discredit the movement. I'm pretty sure that will happen as well. So it could very easily deteriorate, into violence. But the thing is, what is happening in South Africa is a lot of violence. I mean, somewhere between 70 and 85 people a day are being murdered, in South Africa. And as I'm saying, when the rulers of the country, and in this case it's the law of South Africa, is not holy, then the people will suffer. And I'm seeing a lot of that happening. And the government interferes in areas of people's lives that it shouldn't get involved in. But at the same time, it also, doesn't do its job. And we're sitting with a mess. And we're sitting with so many messes. Obviously, there's the immigration mess. We're not even talking now about the family mess. We're not even talking now about the mess in the police, which you're looking at with the Matlanga Commission. And gigs, I can go on. I mean, infrastructure is just falling apart. I'm waiting, to see when we're going to have water problems here in Joburg. Because honestly, what the city council is doing here in Joburg, I don't know how to describe how bad it is.
Yeah.
Driving all over the place, and you see water leaks all over the place. And they're predicting we're going to have a drought next summer because El Nino's back. So now you're pumping out all of this water that's just going down the streets and whatever, and creating plants and jungles where there shouldn't be a jungle because it's so wet. What's going to happen here if we run out of water? Because that is a very real prospect. So people are distracted.
And then now going into Jacinta, she recently put a post up on Facebook, and she was basically responding to residents from the Sherwood community. And the issue that they raised with her was that residents contacted her about the Malawian nationals sleeping in a park, and they wanted assistance removing them from the area. And in her statement, she argued that some South Africans say that they want to help foreign nationals. However, they do not want those same foreign nationals living in their communities. Her broader point was that poor communities often experience the consequence of housing shortages, pressure on schools, pressure on hospitals, competition for resources. Her statement basically moved from beyond immigration, and she argued that immigration is also connected to inequality. Her claim is that some middle-class people benefit from foreign labor. They must employ foreign nationals because labor is cheaper, but they may not want those workers living in their own neighborhood. And out of this, the bigger question basically came on who carries the consequences of economic and government failures. And obviously also brought on the middle class versus poor debate, which you can just comment. Yeah,
the government and middle class failures.
Yes.
That's the issue for me.
Yeah.
All right. And this is actually the complaint.
Yeah.
And you cannot just write this away with the word xenophobic. And the government has created this mess. They've got to face up to it. What I don't like about what she said is she starts turning it into a middle class thing.
Yeah.
Now, when I look at the clothes she wears, gigs. Now, you're obviously a woman. She doesn't look like she's battling financially.
No.
So I don't like the comment about middle class. And the fact is, I will help foreign people.
Which you'll see a lot with South Africans.
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't want to say anything bad about that. But I'll help South Africans too. And she obviously makes like there's a divide with that versus the poor people in South Africa. Now, I'll help poor South Africans too, because I'm a Christian and I'm a pastor. Right, so she mustn't, Jacinta, if you happen to see this video, which hopefully you will, and then you can repost it, please don't make this about class. Okay, make this focus on the failure of those that are the people's representatives in Parliament and in the union buildings and places like that. Please stick to that. Don't if middle class people are helping out poor people, whether they're foreign poor people or local, it doesn't matter. And they don't just help out foreigners. They help out local. You mentioned earlier about the governments taking their people. She made a comment, but I think on the weekend, governments are fetching their people, but the Ethiopian, Somali, Pakistani and Bangladeshi governments are relaxed. By the way, I also read an article about some mass killings in one area in Ethiopia, Islamic killings of Christians there. So while all of the xenophobia talk's going on, there's mass murder happening in Nigeria of Christians, and they dare to say something about South Africa. And there's mass killings of Christians going on in Ethiopia, and they dare to have something to say about South Africa. Why are people not talking about that? All right, I don't see guns, whole lot of motorbikes and buckies, small trucks and things like that, of South Africans going into communities with AK-47s and just slaughtering them. That isn't happening. So I would like to challenge some of the narrative that is going on here.
And just adding to what Pastor Gavin has mentioned, this whole debate, the middle class versus poor, her statement basically has created a debate over that, because what people are taking out of this is that poor communities should be dismissed when they complain about service delivery, housing, resources, competition. And she basically argues that poor South Africans are sometimes labeled as vigilantes when they express frustration about real pressures.
Which is true.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for people taking action, the crime would be far worse in South Africa.
Yeah. And critics argue that the conversation must avoid creating division between the poor and middle class South Africans and foreigners, because the deeper issue may be, and this is what we've been saying, government failure, economic inequality, and lack of planning. And the last question that I think is we should ask you, or maybe discuss, is, has March and March become a political movement? Right? So this is the biggest question. The movement appears to be expanding into government criticism, service delivery issues, economic frustration, leadership discussion, electoral conversations as well. And these are signs of political expansion, because supporters discussing Jacinta as a future leader, conversations about changing the political system and moving beyond immigration policy. So the question about March and March is it a movement demanding immigration reform, or is it a beginning of a wider political movement? Do you want me to share my thoughts first and then you share yours, or would you like to share yours first?
Let me share mine, then you can share yours. For me, it's a movement that's come out of frustration at the government. And, so therefore it is political and always has been. And I just want to read something to you, because they've met with Africa Maibuye. I've heard that MK is supporting them, but they also engaged the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. That's one of the provinces in South Africa. That's where Durban is. The province where Durban is, on the east coast, stretching from the Mozambican border in the north to the Eastern Cape border in the south. After engagement with the Premier of KZN, which is KwaZulu-Natal, Mr. Tami Ntuli, he called one of the most important meetings we've had. So in other words, they're meeting with different political parties. That's the point that I'm trying to make. We had raised issues of our laws being in contradiction and making it hard to solve our immigration crisis in previous meetings. And he then called all the legal minds in all the departments to sit together and go through the legislation we have in the country and see which ones the province can challenge or currently enforce. Thank you, Mpemba, for your leadership on this matter. We appreciate this so much, because it will make sure that South Africans do not continue to be suffering in their own country. Listen to what she's saying, Gigs. while NGOs and NPOs that are funded by globalists continue to abuse our laws and flood us with migrants and render South Africans non-existent in their own country. Another day of directing our concerns to our government and not just marching in the streets to our government. But somehow we will be told we are fighting the wrong people and our methods are wrong. You know, and the thing is, what I want to encourage people with is to actually listen to what she's saying before you challenge it. Now, I'd also just add to, if I was speaking to Jacinta myself, we've got people like gigs over here, all right, who are born in this country and then told they're foreigners. Jacinta, I'd like you to also add to your campaign that must be sorted out. All right, how can you have that? How can you send people to countries they've never been to and say that that's their home? That is exactly what apartheid did. Apartheid said, black people, you're in this homeland, so even though you're born in Soweto, you must now go to Transkei. Okay, we need to sort that out. And we obviously, what she does talk a lot about, we need to solve the border. But she's also has, I've heard her also speak about the processing problems at Home Affairs in terms of processing the foreigners, so that to actually give them a fair shot at being legal. Because that is not working. That process is not working.
Yeah. I think I agree with what you've mentioned.
But you must give your thoughts now.
Yes. I agree with what you've mentioned. So basically, for me, I don't necessarily think that it is a political movement. I think that the issues that they're raising are political issues. The issues they're raising are in the government and can be or should be dealt with by the government. It's not issues that will be dealt with outside of the government or anything. And it could sound like, okay, no, they're wanting to become a political movement or whatever. I think it's just because of how hectic these issues are. It's not about undocumented foreigners or the foreigners living in the nation. It's about what is the government doing about these situations. And again, it's not the only thing that they've brought up. They've spoken about the economic frustrations. They've spoken about service delivery, which are things that the nation has been speaking about for years. I mean, service delivery is a big issue in South Africa. It's a thing that people have been speaking about. So personally, I don't really think that it's a political movement. I mean, Jacinta hasn't really spoken about her wanting to go into the politics and things like that, even though there are supporters discussing her as a future leader and things like that. I feel like it's a bit more complicated than that. But this movement has an effect on politics, I guess. I mean, you spoke about the fact that MK is endorsing them.
I think that's just to get votes.
Yes, I mean, if you look at how
I don't
big,
have an issue that they endorsed, but why now?
That's what I'm saying. So if you look at how big this movement is, the national attention that they have, what's this? People like MK endorsing them could lead them to votes in November. And so I really believe that they have a political influence, but then I don't think that they are becoming a political movement, and next minute we're going to be hearing about a political party that has come out of March and stuff. I mean, it could be a possibility. I'm not saying that it's completely not, but basically from where we are now and what I know about March, that the issues that just go deep into politics, and they touch on the main points in politics that the nation is frustrated about. And stuff. Yeah. So the fact that they're meeting with the political parties, the fact that that's important because that's what we want. That's what the people want, basically. And so those are my thoughts. So
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
What's really bugging me, the only time that the politicians, most of them are talking about illegal foreigners, okay, is when they're talking about pastors who might be battling with their documentation. If they restrict the foreign-born pastors or pastors that are struggling to get their documentation, they're restricting the church. And if you touch one of those pastors, you're touching South Africa's pastors as well. Yeah. I would just like politicians out there to hear what I'm telling you now. leave the church alone, please.
Yeah, in Isaiah 10 verse 1 to 2, it says, "Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, deprive the poor of their rights, and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey, and robbing the fatherless."
Yeah, I really think that those verses are apt, because there are a lot of people in positions in, I think, many governments throughout Africa that are falling foul of that and are not fulfilling their God-given mandate. Because if you're given a position of national leadership, you have a God-given mandate to be a good steward and to rule wisely the people. And the people are all fearfully and wonderfully created in the image of Almighty God. So therefore, you're going to be held to account one day by the Lord in terms of that. And here in South Africa, our government, we've got big problems with the law. This is something we've been talking about for a long time. All right, our laws in South Africa are very problematic. And I like the fact that Jacinta and them, they met with the KZN Premier. And the Premier was saying we need to go through and we need to look at how do we work, within the confines of the law. And the first is, remove the backlog. Sort out the people that were born here. Sort out the people who've been sitting on standby for 20 years, trying to get their applications processed and stuff like that. Sort that out. Do your job. And then sort out the border. And then we can take it from there. If you start sorting the border out and you start sorting the backlog out and you can solve those two problems, then I think you can now start working at solving the issue. But also, the church is the only thing in South Africa that's working. And yet these politicians who are messing everything up that they're responsible for want to regulate the church. They're saying they're going to do a better job of regulating the church than what the church is doing in itself. How rude.
How rude. For real.
You agree?
Yes. This has been an amazing show, an amazing discussion. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm your girl Cynthia, but you can call me Gigs. And with me in studio, we've had
Gavin Ensign.
Pastor Gavin Ensign, right here on The Political Show on XFM, where radio has never been better and Christ politics is
Hot politics.
Hot politics.
This is The Political Show.